spoken about a term called sandbox leadership, something if I remember correctly, which
Yeah,
was
yeah.
quite interesting. What is that about? वो थोड़ा बताओ उसके बारे में. What is that mindset?
Let me give a small example before I go into it, right? And it might connect the dots between leadership, organization, and sandbox leadership too. When we are children, right, and when we are growing up, and I'm sure you have noticed your own kids or here and there, children learn very differently. Even if they think they're very smart, they keep listening through their eyes, through their ears. They are listening. They like to touch everything. There's a socket. You say there's current, and you might get a shock. They still want to poke in there um, because they don't have a failure mindset. And they think, let me learn first and let me build my mental model, and then I'll do something with it. And they don't even know what they'll do. But I think many times leaders, and that's where maybe you're asking initially, right? Traditional leadership fears that, hey, I don't think we should do it because someone told me if I put my finger in a socket, I'll get a shock. That's what happens to leaders, right? They get told, we worked with this idea, never worked. This fails. Or someone told this is against regulation. So then connecting the dot. So sandbox leadership says that have that beginner's child mindset, create a small playroom, which is called sandbox, and do your experiments there. So you can think of it as a leader's playroom, which is they create an environment, a space. It might be virtual or physical or a mix of both. With a small team, they might be full time or part time, again, depending on the organization. They might have a small or big budget, again, completely up to it. But they're saying, let me play in this, let me play with my ideas here, which might range from very tactical, build a website, to very strategic, what if we change regulations or some big policy? And then we learn from it. And then the learning comes out into the bigger organization. So sandbox leadership is a smart way of, I would say, experimenting. Initially, sandbox are very popular in tech world. You will say, I have a sandbox environment. But I think now leaders are trying to make it a bit more in an organizational context too. And that's what it means.
Yeah, this almost sounds like like a startup mindset where you kind of do things, iterate, build a prototype, keep on testing it until you hit the sweet spot. Yeah, we have this MVP ready, and now possibly we can
Mm.
take it out to the larger world.
Sorts of, yes, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So
And
we
you're
have
doing a
talked.
lot of startup work too, right? Do
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
do a lot of these things? Huh?
yeah, yeah. So that is how startups typically work. So the moment you started defining it,
Mm.
that thought
Mm.
came to my mind. Ki this is pretty much how you build a startup. So you
Mm.
you are like what you just mentioned. I think 5 minutes back. Ki yaar, fail faster, try
Yes.
things, fail faster, and then move on.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
uh, talking about moving on. So we have talked about leadership
Mm.
and talked about organizations. So design thinking के
Mm.
फंडे हैं या concepts हैं, can they also be applied at an, say, individual entity level, like for an individual or say
Okay.
for an employee? Is it possible?
Yeah. Awesome. So we are going deeper and deeper, and I love the direction. And before again answer how it applies to an individual, I'll again tell a short story.
Yeah, yeah.
So in 1963, there was a physicist whose name was Derek Prince, and he studied scientific publications. And
Mm-hmm.
his idea was, um, let me find out why are some publications so much more popular than the others. And he noticed something very interesting. He looked at which ones are most popular and which ones don't work at all. And you might think, hey, you know what? I think it might be following a bell curve, right? Like the top 10% are very popular and the rest don't work out. And most of them are in majority middle. But actually, it was far away from bell curve. And that got to be known as Prince's Law. So you can refer to it. Prince's Law says that 50% of the results are produced by square root of the total number of contributors. Now I know it's mathematical, hard to. So let me put it into perspective. It says if you have 100 people company or 100 people working for you, uh, 10 people, which is square root of 100 is 10, 10 people will be producing almost 50% of the output.
Which is
So
which which seems to be a slight variation of Pareto law, right? 20-80 rule.
Yeah.
Slight
Hmm.
variation. Hmm.
Yeah, slight variation. Yeah, so they are maybe it's a theoretical concepts. Although very old, sometimes are very helpful. So he
Yeah.
said this, and then since then, people have studied various systems, and you won't imagine, but actually, this is true in many environments. In fact, just out of the whole galaxy, it's square root of those stars, which is maybe if there are 1,000 stars, there is just less than 10 or 20, which actually produce more than 50% of the light. He studied computer systems, he studied YouTube. And in all of these organizations or teams or whatever, it was square root of the number of people who made 50% or more of the productivity gains. And so, what I'm talking about that is that's what leads to you as an individual. So, what it says is sometimes we stop with first effort, or we have done something 10 times and we say, hey, I have failed 10 times and I don't want to do it. Actually, you shouldn't be stopping there. You should make 100 attempts. And what it says is out of those 100, maybe 10 will be successful, and those 10 will give you more than 50% of what you're looking for. But then most of the times we stop at the top 10, and then the margin of error is lot, and we don't get the benefit of it. So finally ending it with a summary saying that even for an individual, if you're applying these principles, it's not just skill, it's not just opportunity, or sometimes you say it was very lucky. It's actually skill multiplied by consistency, multiplied by opportunity, and a percentage of luck compounded over time, which leads to an individual success. So that's what these principles are applying to an individual level.